sit before me, not merely as listeners of words, but as carriers of ancient wounds, unconscious stories, and burdens that do not wholly belong to you. Many of you who call yourselves empaths carry within your nervous system the suffering of others as if it were your own flesh. You think this is compassion. You believe it is virtue. Yet beneath this surface lies a danger that is almost invisible, for it is hidden not in the light, but in the shadows of your psyche. And it is here that I must speak to you in the language of the unconscious, in the language of symbols, because the rational mind alone cannot understand why you suffer when it is not your suffering that you are carrying. The empath is not simply born out of tenderness, but often out of necessity. Long before you knew yourself, you learned that survival meant sensing every shift in the emotional weather of others. The empath scans the faces of parents, lovers, or strangers, and like an ancient seer, reads the tremors of the soul. You call this a gift, but it was born as a defense. You learned that to feel the inner turbulence of others before it erupted was safer than blindness, and so you developed an antenna tuned to every whisper of another's shadow. But let me give you the hidden warning. When you receive the darkness of another without discernment, when you drink from their poisoned chalice and call it love, you are no longer empathic, you are possessed. You are serving not the archetype of the healer, but the archetype of the scapegoat. This is why empaths are so often drawn to narcissists. The narcissist, unable to face his own demons, projects them outward, searching unconsciously for a vessel willing to carry the unbearable fragments of his psyche. And the empath, so eager to heal, opens her soul as if it were an altar in dreams. This is symbolized by the figure of the vampire. The vampire approaches not with violence at first, but with seduction. It whispers of eternity, of intimacy, of being chosen. But the price is blood, the essence of life. So too the narcissist finds in the empath not merely a partner, but a living sacrifice. The empath takes on the unbearable shame, the unspoken rage, the fractured self-image that the narcissist cannot bear to face, and in so doing begins to live in a fog of emotions that do not belong to them. I have listened to countless patients recount this pattern. They describe how they entered the relationship believing they were the healer, the light bringer, the one who could finally unlock the wounded heart of the other. But over time, they discover that they are not liberators, but captives. Their bodies ache. Their dreams are filled with shadows. Their own identity dissolves into a mist of exhaustion. They wake not as themselves, but as the echo of the other's torment. You must understand, this is not love. It is unconscious possession. Love is born when two whole beings meet in mutual recognition of light and shadow. Possession is born when one disowns his shadow and deposits it into another, and that other accepts it as their own. The empath believes he is carrying a cross of compassion, but in truth she is carrying someone else's demons. Now here lies the mystical truth. The empath has within them the power to return these demons not through revenge, not through hatred, but through the alchemical act of individuation. The empaths must awaken to the realization that what they feel is not wholly theirs. They must separate what belongs to the unconscious of the other from what belongs to their own soul. This is an act of radical discernment. and it requires courage for the empath fears that if they withdraw from the other's shadow, the other will collapse or abandon them. But this is the illusion that binds them to slavery. Let us consider the archetype of Christ. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he feels the weight of the sins of the world pressing upon him. But notice this, he does not carry them indefinitely. He offers them up. He acknowledges the burden, but he does not confuse it with his own essence. He becomes the vessel through which suffering is transmuted, but he does not become the suffering itself. This is the model for the awakened empath. You are not called to absorb and become the demons of another. You are called to reflect them back, to reveal them, so that the one who disowned them may at last be confronted with their own shadow. Imagine the dream of a woman who continually dreams of being chased by dogs. She tells me, they're always growling, always at my heels, and I run until I collapse. Upon analysis, we discover that the dogs are not hers, but belong to her partner's rage, which she absorbs daily in silence. The unconscious is showing her that she cannot forever outrun what does not belong to her. The only resolution is to turn to face the dogs and to say, you are not mine. Return to your master. This is not cruelty, it is individuation. You must grasp that demons, in psychological terms, are disowned energies, shadow fragments, archetypal forces that seek expression. They do not disappear when repressed. They wander until they find a host, and the empath, with their open boundaries, becomes the perfect host. This is why many empaths live with unexplained depression, anxiety, or bodily pain. These are often not symptoms of their own psyche, but the residue of another's unintegrated shadow. The hidden warning is this: if you continue to carry what is not yours, you will one day forget who you are. You will look into the mirror and see only fragments of others staring back. The self will become thin, transparent, until it risks dissolution. Individuation is not possible while you remain the container of another's unconscious. You cannot bring forth your unique soul when you are weighed down by demons that were never born in your depths. So how does one send the demons back? It begins with awareness. The moment you pause and ask, is this emotion truly mine, or have I picked it up like a garment from another's shoulders? You begin to create psychic distance. The narcissist thrives in the empath's inability to distinguish between self and other. But when you begin to discern, when you begin to see, you withdraw the power of possession. Then comes the act of reflection. You no longer absorb the rage or the shame. You mirror it, not in cruelty, but in clarity. You speak, I see your anger, but I will not carry it. I see your shame, but it is not my cloak. In this reflection, the narcissist is forced, however unwillingly, to confront what they have disowned. Some will flee, unable to face themselves. Others may awaken, though rarely, to the truth of their own shadow. And then the final act. The empath must reclaim their own center. This is not merely a boundary, though boundaries are essential. It is a deeper act, the realization that you are sovereign within your own soul. You are not defined by what you absorb. nor by the chaos around you. You are defined by the archetypal self, the eternal image of wholeness that lives within you. When you anchor yourself here, the demons cannot enter. The narcissist may scream, may rage, may attempt to bind you again with guilt or seduction, but once you have tasted sovereignty, you cannot be enslaved again. You realize that sending back the demons is not about harming the other, it is about returning what is theirs, so they may, if they choose, begin their own work of individuation. And it is about freeing yourself to finally live as who you are, not as the container of another's torment. I tell you this in a mystical voice, because the unconscious speaks in images and symbols. You will dream of snakes returning to their dens, of mirrors shattering, of shadows retreating. These are signs that you are no longer carrying what is not yours. You are awakening to your true self, and yet, beware, the first steps of this liberation often bring conflict. The narcissist will not easily release the one who has carried his demons. He will accuse you of abandonment, of cruelty, of betrayal. But understand, these are the cries of one who fears his own shadow. Do not falter. Stand firm in your sovereignty. The path of individuation is never without pain, but it is the only path to wholeness. The empath who awakens becomes not the sacrificial lamb, but the wise mirror. You become not the absorber of demons, but the revealer of truth. And though this may cost you relationships built upon possession, it will grant you something far greater, the unshakable presence of your own soul. This is my hidden warning, and also my hidden hope. For when the empath returns, the demons, when they cease to be the vessel of another's shadow, they become the light bearer of their own destiny. And in doing so, they no longer perpetuate the unconscious dance of projection, but invite the possibility of true love, true recognition, and true wholeness. There is a strange paradox within the empath's path. On the one hand, you are extraordinarily sensitive to suffering. You feel as though the air itself vibrates with the moods of others, and you cannot help but breathe it in. On the other hand, this very sensitivity makes you susceptible to deception, not always intentional, but déception nonetheless. The narcissist deceives not only you, but also himself. He believes his demons are external, that they belong to the world, to other people, to fate. He does not recognize them as his own, and so, like a child who throws away a broken toy, he casts his shadow into the lap of the one who will accept it. But why does the empath accept it? Because somewhere in your unconscious there is an ancient image, an archetype of the wounded healer. You believe that by absorbing the poison of others, you will heal them, and perhaps in healing them, you will also heal the forgotten wound within yourself. But hear me carefully. What you absorb does not heal the other. It merely postpones their confrontation with their own darkness. To carry their demons is not salvation, it is collusion. This is why the unconscious sends you dreams that grow increasingly desperate. A woman who continually dreams of drowning is often not drowning in her own sorrows, but in the sorrows of others. She has taken upon herself. A man who dreams of carrying corpses through endless corridors may not be haunted by his own dead, but by the dead emotions of those he cannot release. The unconscious cries out, "Return what is not yours." Do not mistake this burden for virtue. The empath must undergo a radical transformation. You must move from being the absorber to being the mirror. Do you see the difference? To absorb is to swallow, to take inside, to confuse what is external with what is internal. To mirror is to reveal, to hold up a surface that says, look, this is what you are. When you mirror, you no longer lose yourself in the other's labyrinth. You become the shining lake in which they must, willingly or unwillingly, see their reflection. This is the work of the awakened empath, but the transition is not easy, for it feels like betrayal. The empath has spent a lifetime equating love with carrying. To stop carrying feels like abandonment, cruelty, or selfishness. The narcissist will confirm this fear. He will tell you that you are cold, that you have changed, that you never truly loved. These accusations are the desperate attempts of a fragmented ego to avoid its own reckoning. The empath must hold steady in the storm. The myth of Persephone is instructive here. Persephone, abducted into the underworld, becomes the queen of that realm, not by absorbing the darkness of Hades, but by facing it. She eats the seeds of the pomegranate, symbolizing the integration of shadow. She does not deny the underworld. She learns to move between it and the upper world. The empath, too, must learn this dual movement. You do not deny the existence of the narcissist demons. You do not even hate them. You simply refuse to mistake them for your own. You say, I see your underworld, but I will not live there for you. If you wish to be free, you must walk through it yourself. Consider the archetype of projection. Projection is the unconscious act of attributing to another what one cannot face in oneself. The narcissist, unable to admit his own worthlessness, projects it into the empath. Suddenly, the empath feels unworthy, small, defective. But is this truly hers? No. It is the projection of another's disowned fragment. When the empath absorbs this projection, she becomes a puppet, dancing to another's unconscious script. But when she learns to see it, when she learns to say, this shame is not mine, she cuts the strings. Here is the hidden danger and the hidden liberation. The empath who sends the demons back is not merely protecting herself. She is enacting a profound psychological law. For every projection that is returned, the narcissist is confronted with a choice to face himself or to seek another host. Often, he will seek another host, for the pain of self-recognition is unbearable. But even this is necessary, for only when no one will carry his demons for him will he be forced into his own underworld. Do not underestimate the violence of this confrontation. The narcissist without an empath is like a man without oxygen. He thrashes, he rages, he manipulates, desperate for someone to absorb his unbearable feelings. You, the empath, must resist the temptation to rescue him. For rescue is another form of possession. You must let him suffocate on his own projections until he realizes that the only way forward is inward. This is brutal, but it is also the only path to individuation. Let me speak of the body. The body of the empath becomes the battleground of these unseen demons, migraines, Stomachknots, chronic fatigue, unexplained illnesses. These are often the somatic expression of carrying what is not yours. The body, in its ancient wisdom, refuses to be a dumping ground forever. It revolts, it cries out, and the empath, instead of listening, often takes more medicine, more distraction, more denial. But the true medicine is discernment. The true healing is in saying, no, this burden is not mine to carry. When you release what is not yours, your body begins to breathe again, as if for the first time. Dreams will confirm this process. You will dream of returning objects, of giving away heavy bags, of opening cages. These are signs of liberation. Sometimes you will dream of a dark figure approaching you. If you stand your ground and return the shadow to its owner, you awaken with strength. If you flee, you awaken with exhaustion. Pay attention to these dreams. They are messages from the self, guiding you through the labyrinth of projection. What is the self? The self is the archetype of wholeness, the divine image within you that cannot be possessed, cannot be destroyed. When you live from the self, you no longer confuse yourself with the fragments of others. You realize that you are a whole being, luminous. So from this place, you can love truly. For love is no longer entangled with absorption. Love becomes recognition. I see you, and I see me. I will not carry you, but I will stand with you as you carry yourself. This is the warning and the invitation. If you refuse to return the demons, if you continue to absorb endlessly, you will one day dissolve into bitterness, exhaustion, or even madness. But if you awaken, if you return what is not yours, you will not only save yourself, you will offer the world a model of true empathy. Empathy that does not enslave, but liberates. Empathy that does not carry, but reveals. Empathy that does not collapse into shadow, but shines as a mirror of truth. Now imagine a great hall filled with mirrors. Each mirror is an empath who has awakened. The narcissist enters looking for someone to carry his demons, but everywhere he turns he sees only himself reflected. At first he rages, shatters the mirrors, curses the reflections, but eventually, exhausted, he sees in the fragments of glass the outline of his own face. For the first time, he realizes that the demon he feared was his own shadow. This is the possibility. When empaths stop carrying, they become the mirrors through which others may finally confront themselves. I say this not to romanticize suffering, but to speak the truth of individuation. Individuation is the process by which the unconscious becomes conscious, by which the fragments of shadow are integrated into the whole. It is not an easy path. It demands sacrifice, the sacrifice of illusions, of false compassion, of unhealthy attachments. But in this sacrifice lies freedom. The empath who dares to individuate becomes not the scapegoat of the narcissist, but the guide of the soul. Remember, demons in psychology are not creatures of myth, but energies that seek recognition. When they are denied, they possess. When they are faced, they transform. The empath who returns the demon is not condemning the narcissist, but offering him the chance of transformation. Whether he takes it is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is only this: to guard your soul, to live from the self, to carry only what belongs to you. This is the secret, the hidden warning. For to live otherwise is to become the graveyard of other people's shadows. And there is no greater tragedy than a soul that was meant to shine, becoming instead a tomb of unowned demons. There comes a moment in every empath's life when silence begins to suffocate. You realize that you have spent years, perhaps decades, holding the unspoken emotions of others, swallowing the words they never dared to utter, carrying the guilt they could not face. And when you finally try to breathe for yourself, you feel the weight of invisible chains. This is the cost of unconscious empathy. It binds you not only to the other, but also to their unresolved demons. Yet, liberation begins not with rebellion, but with recognition. You must recognize that your sensitivity, your gift of empathy, is double-edged. It can reveal the soul of another like the light of a candle in darkness, but it can also blind you when you mistake their darkness for your own. This confusion is the fertile ground upon which possession thrives. The narcissist knows this instinctively. He knows, even without conscious awareness, that you will question yourself before you question him. He will say, "You are imagining things. You are too sensitive. You are overreacting. And because you doubt yourself, you agree to carry his shadow instead." But let me ask you, what happens when you stop doubting? What happens when you allow yourself to trust that your perception of the unconscious is not madness, but insight? The empath who awakens becomes a seer. You begin to see what is hidden, not to carry it, but to reveal it. You become dangerous to the narcissist because you no longer serve as a scapegoat. Instead, you expose the very demons he spent his life avoiding. At this stage, dreams become sharper. Many of my patients in this transformation describe dreams of masks falling away, of faces melting to reveal grotesque forms beneath. These dreams are not to terrify you, but to prepare you. They are the psyche's way of saying, look more deeply. Do not be deceived by appearances. The narcissist may appear confident, charming, powerful, but the unconscious reveals his inner reality, fragmented, fragile, haunted by shadows. When you see this, you are no longer seduced, you are awakened, but awakening is lonely. For when you cease to carry, you also cease to be needed in the same way. The narcissist does not love the empath for who she is. He loves her for what she carries. When she stops carrying, his affection turns to contempt, his warmth to coldness. He may rage, manipulate, withdraw, or abandon. This is his way of saying, if you will not carry my demons, you are of no use to me. And this is the test for the empath. Will you cling to the illusion of love, or will you embrace the truth of your own soul? This is why I say the empath must pass through a dark night of the soul. You must learn to live without the constant pull of the narcissist's shadow. At first, you feel empty, unanchored, even guilty. You ask yourself, am I cruel for not carrying? Am I selfish for setting down this burden? But this emptiness is not cruelty, it is purification. The silence that follows is not abandonment. It is the space in which your true self can finally emerge. You see, the empath's true gift is not absorption but vision. You were never meant to become a container of shadows. You were meant to become a revealer of truth. When you stop carrying, you begin to see patterns you never noticed before. You see how the narcissist's charm was a mask, how his anger was a projection, how his need for you was not love but dependency. And as you see, you reclaim your power. In mythology, there is the figure of Medusa. Many fear her, for her gaze turns men to stone. But what is this myth, if not a symbol of reflection? Medusa's power is to force others to face themselves. Those who cannot bear their own image are petrified, frozen by the shock of recognition. The empath, when awakened, becomes a kind of Medusa, not to destroy, but to reveal. You reflect the truth so clearly that those who live in lies cannot bear to look. This is why the narcissist flees the awakened empath. It is not because you have failed him, but because you have succeeded. You have become the mirror. He cannot bear, and though this may break your heart, it is also the greatest service you can offer. For even in fleeing, he is forced to confront the fact that his demons are his own. Let us also speak of shadow integration, for the empath's task is not only to return the demons of others, but also to recognize your own. You too have a shadow, and often it is this unacknowledged shadow that keeps you entangled. You may carry others' shame because you fear facing your own. You may absorb others' rage because you dare not express your own. You may cling to toxic love because you are afraid of loneliness. These are your own demons, and they must be met with the same courage you use to return the demons of others. The process of individuation demands that you descend into your own underworld. Here, you will find the parts of yourself you have rejected, your anger, your selfishness, your hunger, your sexuality, your cruelty. Do not be afraid. These are not evil, they are fragments of your wholeness. When you integrate them, they no longer control you unconsciously. You no longer need to carry other shadows because you have faced your own. This is the secret of true strength. In practical terms, this means paying attention to the small signals. When you feel a wave of guilt that seems disproportionate, ask, whose guilt is this, mine or theirs? When you feel rage rising in your chest after being near someone, ask, whose rage am I carrying? And when you discover that it is not yours, release it. You can release it through ritual, through prayer, through visualization. Imagine handing back a heavy stone or opening your chest and letting the smoke drift away. The form matters less than the intention. The psyche responds to symbols. Over time, this practice changes you. You become lighter, clearer, more whole. You notice that your dreams shift. Instead of being chased, you begin to stand your ground. Instead of drowning, you find yourself walking on water. These are signs of individuation, the unconscious, affirming that you are no longer a victim, but a sovereign soul. And now I must speak to you of love. True love is not possession. It is not projection. It is not absorption. True love is the meeting of two souls who have faced their own shadows and stand whole before one another. Anything less is not love but entanglement. The empath who sends back the demons makes space for this kind of love. You can no longer be seduced by those who only want a vessel. You will only be drawn to those who stand as vessels of their own wholeness. This is rare, but it is possible. The hidden warning then is also a hidden promise. If you awaken, if you refuse to carry what is not yours, you will at first feel loss, but in time you will find a love that does not enslave. You will find relationships that do not drain you but nourish you. You will find within yourself a strength you never imagined. This is the path of individuation. This is the destiny of the awakened empath. And so I ask you now to imagine yourself standing at the threshold of a dark cave. Inside the cave are the demons you have carried for years. They whisper, they plead, they accuse, but you hold in your hand a lantern, the light of the self. You enter not to live in the cave, but to return what does not belong to you. You place each demon at the feet of its true master. You say, this is yours. I will no longer carry it. And as you do, you feel your own soul becoming lighter, brighter, freer. This is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of truth. And truth, though it wounds at first, always heals in the end. I must tell you now of the deeper mystery that lies beneath this dynamic. When the empath sends the demons back, the world itself shifts. For this is not only a personal act, it is a collective one. Every projection returned to its rightful owner becomes a fragment of shadow reclaimed for the greater whole of humanity. The empath is not only freeing herself, she is freeing the archetypal field in which all of us live. For centuries, empaths have carried the wounds of others silently, like hidden signs, absorbing collective traumas that no one else could face. They carried the rage of fathers, the shame of mothers, the grief of entire families and tribes. And though this sacrifice kept a fragile balance, it also perpetuated the collective refusal to face the shadow. Humanity has grown dependent on its empaths. Just as the narcissist grows dependent on his chosen vessel, and now, as more empaths awaken, the collective is beginning to tremble, for the demons are returning home. This is why the times feel more chaotic, why shadows rise everywhere in politics, in relationships, in society. The empaths are no longer willing to carry the unconscious burdens, and so the shadows erupt into the open. Do not be afraid. This eruption is not the end of the world, it is the beginning of individuation for humanity itself. But for you personally, this awakening comes with trials. The narcissist may intensify his attempts to bind you. He may become more seductive, more threatening, more disparate. He may alternate between idealization and devaluation with dizzying speed. This is not love, it is possession attempting to survive. Recognize it for what it is. And when you do, stand firm. Say to yourself, I will not be your vessel. I will not be your scapegoat. I will not mistake your shadow for my essence. And in your dreams, you may see storms, earthquakes, floods. These are the symbols of psychic upheaval. Do not interpret them as destruction, but as cleansing. The unconscious is showing you that what was stagnant, what was festering, is now being washed away. Sometimes you will dream of fire, and in these dreams you may fear being consumed. But know this, the fire is not to destroy you, but to burn away what is not yours. You awaken from such dreams lighter, purified, reborn, and now let us reflect on the figure of the self once more. The self is the archetype of divine wholeness, the inner Christ, the Atman, the eternal image of God in the soul. When you anchor in the self, you are untouchable by projection. Shadows may be thrown at you, but they do not stick. Demons may come knocking, but they cannot enter. You stand like a mountain in the storm, unmoved, because you know who you are. This is not arrogance, it is sacred humility. To stand in the self is to acknowledge that you are not merely your ego, not merely your wounds, not merely your roles. You are a spark of the eternal whole. And from this place, you can say no without hatred. You can return demons without malice. You can love without carrying. For love in its truest form is not sacrifice, but recognition. Do you understand what I mean? Recognition is the act of seeing the other as they truly are, shadow and all, without illusion. When you recognize the narcissist, you see not only his charm, but also his fear, his fragmentation, his refusal of self. You see him clearly, without absorbing, without excusing. This clarity is love of the highest kind, because it honors the truth. To carry his demons would be to collude in his illusion. To return them is to love him enough to demand he meet himself, and here lies the paradox. When you stop carrying, when you send the demons back, you may lose the relationship, but you gain the possibility of true relationship. You open the door to connections built not on projection, but on authenticity. This is terrifying, for it requires you to trust that your worth does not depend on carrying the weight of others. But it is also liberating, for it opens you to a love that does not enslave. This, then, is my hidden warning and my hidden promise. If you continue to carry, you will lose yourself. If you waken and return, you will find yourself, and in finding yourself, you may lose a narcissist, but you will gain the world, for the world is starving for those who live from the self, those who mirror truth rather than absorb lies, those who stand as sovereign souls rather than sacrificial vessels. I tell you this not only as a psychologist, but as one who has walked the path of dreams, symbols, and archetypes. I have seen in countless lives the devastation of unconscious empathy, and I have seen also the luminous rebirth of those who dare to awaken. They do not become cold, as they once feared. They become radiant. They do not become selfish. They become whole. So I invite you now, in this very moment, to imagine releasing what you carry. Close your eyes in your heart and see the faces of those whose burdens you have borne. Parents, lovers, friends, strangers. See the guilt, the rage, the shame, the sorrow you have carried for them, and one by one hand it back, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with clarity. Say to each, this is yours. I honor your path, but I will not walk it for you. And as you do, feel the weight leaving your shoulders. Feel the chains falling. Feel the light returning to your soul. This is not fantasy. It is psychological truth. For the unconscious responds to symbols, and every act of inner release is an act of real liberation. Practice this daily, and you will feel yourself becoming freer, stronger, more whole. And when at last you stand in the fullness of your own soul, you will see the world differently. You will no longer fear the narcissist for his demons, no longer bind you. You will no longer fear your own shadow, for you have faced it and integrated it. You will no longer confuse love with sacrifice, for you know that love is born of recognition, and in this state you will live as a mirror of truth, a bearer of light, a sovereign soul in a world desperate for awakening. This is my final word to you. Do not fear the demons. They are not evil in themselves, only disowned. Do not fear the narcissist. He is not your master, only a mirror of what you must no longer carry. Do not fear your own shadow. It is not your enemy, but the path to your wholeness. Fear only this, that you might live and die never having returned what was never yours, that you might miss the chance to stand in the fullness of yourself. So take courage, return what is not yours, face what is, and in doing so, you will not only save yourself, you will participate in the redemption of the world. And now, let us close with a vision. Imagine a great river flowing through the earth, carrying all the shadows that were once misplaced, one by one. Empaths around the world release their burdens into this river. It swells with demons, projections, fragments, but as it flows, the waters purify them. And from the river rises a great light, the light of the collective self. This is what happens when the empath awakens. This is what happens when you awaken. You are no longer the scapegoat. You are the mirror. You are no longer the vessel of demons. You are the vessel of light, and the world will never be the same.